not been overturned. Okay? Was it Hale versus Hinkle? And like I said, I do have quite a few packets back there. And I've got the audio of this lecture. You know, it's basically the same thing I'm talking about right now. And this has the copy of that in there, plus the constitutional traffic stop written out, and it has all these case sites. Okay? All right? Now, the use of the highways for the purpose of travel and transportation is not a mere privilege, but a common and fundamental right of which the public and the individual cannot rightly be deprived. So once again, over and over again, we're hearing the exact same thing. Okay? Now, the legal definitions. We can go into this. I mentioned the drivers earlier. Okay? The legal definition of a motor vehicle is made very clear in the United States Code, Title 18, Section 31. Motor vehicle means every description or other contrivance propelled or drawn by mechanical power and used for commercial purposes on the highways in the transportation of passengers or passengers and property. So it has to be a commercial act. A motor vehicle is a commercial vehicle. Okay? Other cases are clearly defined: automobile, driver's license, driver license, and even the word traffic. Okay? The word automobile connotes a pleasure vehicle designed for the transportation of persons on highways. American Mutual Liberty Insurance Company versus Chaput. Okay? Driver, one employed in conducting a coach, carriage, wagon, or other vehicle. It's Bouvier's Law Dictionary, which, by the way, is what the Supreme Court moved to from Blackstone's commentaries on the English common law, which was required in the courts until just after the Civil War. Once again, right when they converted the unalienable rights to civil rights. Okay? Okay. Notice this definition also included one who is employed using a vehicle. Okay? Traffic. That's another interesting one. Commerce, trade, sale or exchange of merchandise, bills, money, or the like. The passing of goods and commodities from one person to another for an equivalent in goods or money. So a traffic ticket is this exchange that is taking place. It's an act of commerce. And that is also ruled, and that is also out of Bouvier's. Okay? Now here again, the definition refers to conducting business. The proper legal definition of a license, here we go again, is a permit granted by an appropriate government body, generally for consideration, to a person, firm, or a corporation to pursue some occupation or to carry on some business which is subject to regulation under the police power. Okay? That's Rosenblatt versus California State Board of Pharmacy. Okay? The police power of the state, now I've got to touch on that one because I've added this one in, the state must be exercised in subordination to the provisions of the United States Constitution. So once again, the police power does not, if it violates one of those 24 enumerated rights, or all those other rights that were listed are unenumerated in the Ninth Amendment, the police power can't act on it. And that is according to law. The essential elements of due process. I mentioned due process earlier. I'll just cover this one real quickly. Notice in the opportunity to defend. Okay? I can guarantee that no one here, it went down for your first driver's license, quote unquote, was given notice that you'd be trading your unalienable right to travel for a privilege to travel. Because if you had, you would have said, no, I don't want to do that. You know, there's no way. I'm not going to give up this right. I sidestep again. Same thing would have happened when they came to you and they gave you, if you knew what you know now, or hopefully you know now, when they handed you, you had to go down, and now you don't even have to. Now even babies get a Social Security number. Isn't that marvelous? So we used to have to go down there before you could get a job. You'd have to go get your Social Security card and all this. And they handed it to you, and they said, okay, you got to fill this out and check the box on the back. And so you turn it over, and it says, are you a U.S. citizen? And how many of us signed that? Check that box. Everybody in the room? Yeah, we all did. We said, yeah, I guess I am. No problem. Give me this so I can go to work. Okay? We didn't need that. Okay? And nowhere, by the way, nowhere in that Social Security Act did it ever say that that was permission to work. No. As a matter of fact, it said it couldn't be used as a form of ID. And yet, it's now being used in everything. Now they want to get your Social Security number before you can get one of those driver's licenses. Okay? Once again, they keep stepping it up. You know, any more than we can get. That's fine. Okay? Now, because we weren't informed of that fact when we went in there to get that driver's license, It amounts to constructive fraud, which is also violated of Title 18, Section 242, and Title 42, Section 1983. It's a violation of your rights. Okay? So you can easily go after them and go after them personally. Remember, under Title 42, Section 1983, they have no immunity. They have no immunity whatsoever. Okay? Now, there should be no arbitrary deprivation of life or liberty. That's another great case. Barber versus Connolly. Now, it's the duty of the courts to be watchful for the constitutional rights of the citizens and against any stealthy encroachments thereon. Now, isn't that a great case for us to remember? Stealthy encroachments? Yeah, I'd say that's the way they did it. Because they sneak this in on you, and then they add something else, Then they can put them together sometimes. Okay? So this is exactly what's happened to us. Now, every police officer, judge, or local magistrate will tell you, and I'm sure that most people in this room have seen this, they'll tell you that the laws are for the good of the people, okay? And that it's your responsibility as a citizen to follow them. Now, that's a blatant flaunting of the case law that we've just read. It's saying, no, wait a minute. As long as I'm not violating their property or person, I haven't violated the law. I'm not infringing on any of their rights. I'm not touching any of that, and therefore you have no say in this case. Okay? Now, disobedience or evasion of a constitutional mandate cannot be tolerated, even though, and I love this, such obedience may, at least temporarily, promote in some respects the best interests of the public. Now, that one's from Sloat versus Examination. So therefore, in this one, even if they say, well, it's for the public good, if you're driving 90 miles an hour down through that, little subdivision, and there's kids running across the street, it's probably, in certain cases, it could be very dangerous. That's why we have rights that are tied to a responsibility. We're accountable. We're responsible for our actions, so that comes back with it. And if we harm somebody, we need to go ahead and we're going to make recompense. We're going to go ahead and do that. There's no doubt about it. And under the Republic of Texas, people are going to have to learn accountability and responsibility all over again, including myself. I'll be perfectly admitting to that, because the fact is that we're not used to doing this. We haven't been raised this way. Okay? Now, economic necessity cannot justify a disregard of a constitutional guarantee. Raleigh versus Carter. Next one. No public policy of a state can be allowed to override the positive guarantees of the U.S. Constitution. Now, that one is also out of American jurisprudence. Now, the driver's license is a legal contract with the state to conduct business on public thoroughfares, but it's only valid, even in that case, when it's knowingly, intentionally, and willfully given to them. So therefore, if you're going in there to sign sign up to get a driver's license, are they telling you that you're giving up your right? No. Any part of a contract where you're not given full disclosure from their side is unconstitutional. That's why many people, including myself, have gone in there and tried to go ahead and reverse a lot of these contracts, pull right out of them, do whatever we've got to do. And we've done that on many cases. There's several people I know of that have backed out of marriage. Had it annulled, said, hey, wait a minute. The state was not a part of my marriage. I'm sorry. We stood up there in front of God and we said, yeah, we're going to get married. We're going to stay together for life. But you had nothing to do with it. Okay? So these things need to be considered, and we need to address them. Okay? The people never give up their liberties, but under some delusion. That's a quote from Edmund Burke, one of the early American founders. We must have been delusional. We must have been. When we waive our right to travel for some kind of a privilege that they can repeal from us, take away from us at any point in time. We the people have allowed this usurpation of our rights. We've got to admit that. We have. My great-grandparents, my great-great-grandparents, they started it. They did. They didn't know this was happening. Remember it said stealthy encroachment earlier? That's exactly how they did it. They'd say, oh, well, this is for the public good. Anytime they pass some kind of new legislation, they'll always give you something that sounds really good. They'll say, hey, we've got a really good, just reason for doing what we're doing. But we've got to start as a people and as individuals to look at every single one of these times that they pass one of these laws and say, okay, it sounds good, but what's wrong with this? What rights is it violating? Now, how many people, when they go to vote in elections for your representatives in America, Okay? When you go in to vote for those, how many of those people go in there that you think that actually understand what their unalienable rights are? And when they go to vote for laws to be passed, do they actually look at it and say, okay, well, before I can say, oh, this sounds really good, but is it infringing on anybody else's rights? Would it infringe on mine? And if they look at that and then they could actually say, no, absolutely not, I can't sign this. I'm voting no, absolutely not. 99.9% of the American populace has no clue. Because they don't know their rights. They don't have any. Okay? So I'm going to be closing up on this. The belief in unalienable rights laid out in the Declaration of Independence as a foundation of freedom for the common man operating under God's law. Okay? I'm going to read this to you because I'm going to just kind of close on this note. America was founded on Christian principles regardless of what you may hear in the mainstream media. It was a Christian nation even according to the Supreme Court. I quote Justice Brewer in this unanimous decision. These and many other matters which might be noticed out of volume of unofficial declarations to the mass of organic utterances that this is a Christian nation. This is Holy Trinity Church versus the U.S. And he continued, in his opinion, it is a familiar rule that a thing may be within the letter of the statute and yet not within the statute, because not within its spirit, nor within the intention of its makers. Now see, this belief cannot be allowed by the government. Cannot be allowed by the government. The reason being is it's much easier to enslave people that don't believe in unalienable rights, because they will all of a sudden recognize, wait a minute, we don't have to be enslaved. I was not born a slave. So therefore, I'm not going to accept slavery. Okay? However, there is one other thing, because we have given up a lot of these rights, and we just need to regain them. And that's by knowledge, by education, teaching ourselves, learning what we should have learned when we were this tall. Okay? And that is, we were also imbued by something else by our Creator called a desire for freedom. That's why everyone in this room is in this room. Because we know, somewhere down in here, that we were destined for freedom and liberty from our birth. Sometimes talk from the conception. And I don't go into that argument too much because somebody says, well, it's conception takes place there or here. It doesn't matter. You're born with these unalienable rights. Okay? So at this point, we have got to come back to the point where our desire for freedom is strong enough that we do not ever allow our rights to be violated again.